Thanks for watching. I'm basically just removing the snap ring on the reverse drum, and basically I'll reach in and I'll start pulling out what I can. I try to pull them all out together, but sometimes can't get them all. As you can see, I just grabbed the top plate, and now I'm going to reach in and try to get all the clutches out as I can. And then there'll probably be one here, I believe, that will not come out. So what I think I'll probably do is just take the whole drum, turn it over, and try and hold the clutch in the same position to come out, because when you're putting these back in, you're going to want to make sure. Now what I'm doing is counting to make sure I've got enough clutches in my new pack and my new steels. I want to make sure I got enough of those, which I did. But sometimes you do miss a clutch or a steel in your package. So here I'm basically taking the piston that's in the bottom, and I'm going to replace the seal that goes on it. That seal is got a beveled edge and it faces up the way I'm holding it here. And with that, I want to make sure that the flange basically is pointing the same way. Now the inner one's pointing the same way as well, if I remember correctly, but you want to look at that and make sure your seals are basically pointing the same way when you put them back on. And I'm checking this right here to make sure I've got the right seal that goes in, because sometimes you'll have a smaller one, a little bit smaller one than you will with a larger one. So they're going to fit a little tight. You'll have to stretch them a little bit to get them to go over the edge as you're putting them on. But you want to make sure you got the lip facing the correct way, and then you want to make sure that you got the right seal in. Hopefully I'm not repeating myself, but as you'll see here, I stretch it a little bit. See how it's a little tight, and you can tell that once it fits in the groove, it's a nice good sound fit. So just be careful when you're putting them in. The inner one's going to be a little bit different. You'll see if you never put one in. However, they go in just fine, but you just want to make sure you lubricate them prior to putting them in. They go in a little bit easier. You don't want them dry. I always coat them with transmission fluid, and do the inner one as well. Now how I clean the whole thing is I'll take carburetor cleaner, and I basically clean out everything as far as metal and debris and objects, and then I will basically blow it off with air, because it'll dry and evaporate. That's just my technique, but the way you do it is your business. So as you can see, I'm putting the center one in now, and I've already got everything clean, as you've seen. I just told you to make sure the lips are facing up. And I've already replaced the bushings in this drum. I've got that on another video. You need to watch that. I'm sure you can find that throughout the YouTube exploration deal here. So just make sure that you coat them before you put them in, and we'll get farther into that as we go along here. Then I'll show you how to check them. So I pulled these out, and I flip them over. I like to pull from the bottom. You'll see that here. Even though I flip them over, I might take the whole thing and flip it back over and then pull from the bottom. So as you start seeing all your drum here, like I said, I start coating it real good with some transmission fluid. The inners and the outer space around the drum, I'll coat with some Vaseline. I don't put Vaseline on the clutches or steels ever, but I will take and I will put Vaseline around those edges. That'll help go in, make it go in a lot easier. So you can use Vaseline, or you can buy some kind of transmission stuff. I never bought it. I just always have used the Vaseline, basically. Just don't put a lot in there. That's all I recommend. So other than that, we'll start putting in the clutches here in a second. As you can see, I'm kind of just coating everything real good. Now, how I put this in, I think I got ahead of myself there with the clutches, but either way, I'll show you how I put this in here. I basically take like a Coke bottle, and I'll take and cut me out it'll look like a bullet, but a large bullet, flat. So that's how I usually get them in. I coat the piece of plastic. Once I coat it, I'll start running that seal around. And you got to be careful because you don't want to rip your seals. But as you can see here, it's a piece of plastic basically, and that's all it is. Now you can use some plastic, like you got a tool in, you know, just cut you a piece of plastic out. But mine was kind of rounded. It was kind of shaped in a kind of like a horseshoe a little bit, so that way, you know, it'd go around a circle. And see how I'm running it around, and I've got one in the middle as well. I run both of them around, and I apply just a little bit of pressure until that thing falls in. I usually leave the center one in until I've run it completely around the edges, and I'll pull the center one out as you see here, and then that piston will drop right in there. A lot of people make it harder than it is, but as you can see, those pieces of plastic work excellent. So I'm checking it out just to make sure it spins in there and it's not free, or I cut or split the seal. Other than that, we'll move on here, and I'll put the spring on the top. And then what I'm going to show you is I've had a tool that I've made. You know, for people who are only doing this once, they need to remove the rear casing piston or something like that, and they're removing that snap ring. You can use this tool on either one, this or any of the other drums as well. So what I do is I've basically made this, and it's made out of this wood and a threaded rod with 2 nuts on it. And then what I do is I run the nut down, and I put 2 15mm deep well sockets on it. And what holds them in there, as you can see here, I just setting it up with, you know, setting it up on it. But you can take super glue and you can put underneath the wood and the socket, and you can glue them to it. Now, how do you know how far apart to put them? Well, what I did was I pretty much just measured side to side, and then I took a wood hole drill, and I drilled out the centers just halfway through the wood. I'll show you that here in a second, but you can take super glue and you can hold them sockets in place if you want to. I practice with it, and you can pretty much, you know, mark how far apart you need them. They kind of bow out maybe a little bit, but you want to get them as flat as possible. You can put plates underneath them down to the plate where the snap ring goes in, or the spring plate. So you want to go slow too when you're bringing it down if you're not using any kind of plates around that thin plastic. You don't want to bend it and flex it. So as you see here, I'm moving side to side, making sure that, you know, I'm not flexing that spring plate, because you don't want to bend that up. It'll make it harder for you to put that snap ring in there. Like I said, this is just an old tool I want to show you. You can do it yourself, or you can basically, you know, you can buy the $100 tool by the time you pay for shipping and taxes and all that good stuff. But you can use this. In my other videos, you'll see the tool. But I got this one out because I had it in a box of all my transmission tools, and I figured I'd just show you what it looked like. It's kind of neat. Old school way of when you were a kid and you didn't have anything else to do it, but you wanted to rebuild a transmission for a friend. So just wanted to show you that. Either way, once you take it out, I'll show you here. Basically, I use the 15mm socket. I was looking them up here just to make sure, but I took this off here. I'll show you the underside. As you can see, I just basically drilled 2 hole sockets in it. Didn't even use the center one. I just basically eyeballed it and made it. Now, here's what we're doing. We're going to check the drum on the front pump. You got to hold it down a little bit. You don't want to just leave it. It might blow it off. But there's about 6 holes or 7 holes on the front of your pump, and it's like the second or third one over from the right. And you'll see that piston here. Watch this piston. It'll basically lift up in there. And see how it's lifting there? you'll hear air bleed off. Now what I'm doing is holding my finger over the hole, but that's normal. If you hear air bleeding off while you're doing that piston, it's not going to hurt it. I mean, but I'm holding my finger over the hole right there. But you don't have to hold your finger over the hole. You can basically just pressurize it and see your piston rise. It'll bleed off. So I only use about 20 pounds of pressure, not very much. Here we start sticking in the clutches and steels. First you got is a wafer umbrella facing up, which is normal position for an umbrella. As you can see here, I show you the dome goes over, and then I'm going to go in with a steel, and then a clutch, steel, clutch, steel, clutch. Now these are all lubricated. Steel, clutch, and then I've got the backing plate and then the snap ring. So you slide the snap ring down in there, you'll see the groove that it goes in. It's not that hard to figure out. And I'll put that snap ring in. Usually just use a screwdriver. Now some of my screwdrivers have notches cut out in them, so that way when you go to pull these out, you can basically just reach in there, twist it out, grab a hold of it and pull it up. Might have to make a video on showing you transmission tools here, because there's all kinds of different tools that you use in a transmission, but that snap ring ain't that hard on that one. That one's pretty easy. You can shove it down in here. So as my dad's showing you here, he's basically showing you there's a hole in it, but you don't necessarily have to worry about it. Just pressurize that front pump and you'll be fine. So here again, we'll show you once we get everything in. We just make sure the clutches are pressed up against the top plate, and you'll hear that air being bled off. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe, share, and like if it helped you out, and I know it will.